Okay, we are finally live. Holy banana bread. That was fun. For some reason, every so often I run into this bug where the computer just doesn't recognize my phone, which is what I use for the camera for the live streams. And I had to play around a bit. I had to reboot the phone. I had to actually, I got FaceTime to recognize the camera. And then once that happened, StreamYard followed suit pretty darn fast. So we're here. We're here. Fantastic. So tonight, I'm actually going to be drinking water. So tonight I'll be drinking water instead of my traditional coffee, only because it's a little bit later at night and I probably shouldn't have coffee that late at night. But yeah, so the topic tonight, of course, is retirement. We're going to talk about that. We're going to answer your questions. We're going to chill. We're going to hang for a while. It should be a pretty good evening. It should be a really good evening. And I think after this, those of you who are into the hockey, you've got the game. You got the game going on. So you can definitely check that out and see if the Oilers can somehow get back into the series. All right. Before we get into any of the content part, let's check in with the chat. We got Jonathan in right away. Am I late? No. I'm late. I was a couple minutes late. Enid says hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We got Stan in the house. We got Sammer in the house. Sammer says, good afternoon, guys. So you must be, Sammer, on the West Coast because it's a little bit into the evening out here on the East Coast. There is a chance that you may get to hear some sound effects during this stream because we got thunderstorms that are rolling in sometime tonight. I'm not sure what the timing is on that, so we'll have to take a look. Mario says I'm old. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. And Jonathan is like, what are you young whippersnappers saying? So not too shabby. And we got Al Bundy in here with a good old hi. Enid says, I think I'm the oldest here. Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to say. Sammer says, I bet you are not, Enid. And Al says, I can't sleep. If I drink coffee in the afternoon or later, yeah, I can sleep. It's just, I probably shouldn't be doing it. That's all. So this here is not so bad. I've got the bubbly grapefruit. Sorry, I need to pull it over to the camera. Grapefruit bubbly tonight. So that will be my my fuel. Let's see. Enid says, I look young and beautiful, but I'm 61. 61's not that old. Not that old at all. All right. And Al says, are you retired yet? And Enid says, yes. Well, congratulations on that. Congratulations on that. So we're definitely going to be talking about that tonight. Really, really funny. I had a comment the other day. Somebody actually said, oh my God, is this turning into an old person's channel? Retirement. Why are we going to be talking about retirement? Well, one, that's what was voted. Two, as we're going to sort of talk a little bit about tonight, retirement's something you should be thinking about as early as your 20s. It's not something to sort of wait until you're on the precipice of it. You need to plan. And we're going to look at this. We're actually, the way I'm breaking down tonight is we're going to look at your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, and then 60s going into retirement. So we're going to look at a little bit about all of these years. So that's going to be kind of cool. JJ's in the house with a hi, y'all. And a few answers back. Good for you, Enid. Al Bundy is 105. Glenna is 67. Glenna, good to see you, Glenna. I'm always happy to see you. Al says, just kidding. So Al is not 105. Okay. Enid says, I was laid off at 58 and refused to work for anybody else in this lifetime. Fair enough. And JJ is aiming for financial independence by 35. That's not a bad goal. Not a bad goal. But you'll find, even if, let's say, JJ, at 35, you are financially independent, that doesn't mean that you're going to stop working. You're just going to probably work on stuff that you want to do. You'll still be bringing the money in. It's one of these things. Like, nobody's going to stop at 35 and then just say, okay, I'm never going to work or make another dime the rest of my life. I'm good. I'm good. So it usually doesn't happen that way, but if anything, maybe even, and let's say you did have enough money at 35 that you didn't have to work another day in your life. I imagine the first year you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it a lot, but after that, it'll probably get boring. I'm thinking boredom will drive you to do something. Enid says age is just a number. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So JJ says got 12 years. Got 12 years to go. Let's see, JJ at 35. Wow. All right. And Al says, JJ, you are too young and smart to quit working. So there we go. There we go. And that's and like I said, I think that's the goal of financial independence is once you have that, you do what you want to do. It's not like you have to go and work some grind type job that you don't like. There's nothing worse than going to a job every day that you hate and that you're like, oh, is there any way I could just quit this job? So it's nice when you're working at something that you want to, even if you're working less hours, even if it doesn't pay a lot. Like, I would rather get paid less doing something I enjoy than get paid more doing something that stresses me out beyond imagining every single day. So just something to keep in mind. JJ says currently about 1/5 of the way there. So I think JJ has a really good, a good outlook. So here's the interesting thing. So let's talk a little bit about that outlook. So when you're in your 20s, you're not thinking about retirement. Who thinks about retirement in their 20s? Actually, the funny thing is, a lot of people in their 20s aren't even thinking about investing. So that's kind of sad. So if you're not thinking about investing, you're probably not thinking about retirement. I know in my 20s, it's like I wasn't thinking about investing. I wasn't thinking about retirement. I wasn't thinking about, oh God, should I put stuff in my RRSP or I wasn't thinking about accounts. I wasn't thinking about any of that. So that's kind of one of those goals. So as people learn about investing, hopefully in their 20s, one of the things is the earlier you start when it comes to investing, the better off you're going to be with retirement. So, and here's the thing, at 20, you may not even be thinking, you may just be thinking, okay, well, what do I want? I want a car or I want a house. Maybe I can use investing to get there. So even if you're using investing for that reason, you are unintentionally helping yourself in retirement a little bit at the same time. So let's say, for example, you have your TFSA. So, you've had it for, you're in your 20s, you don't have a lot of contribution room, but you're using it and you're growing stuff in your TFSA. Like maybe you're growing some stocks because you're looking to get a car within a few years or so. That's fantastic. But what you've done is and this is where I need to pull out the I think I need to pull out our whiteboard. I like the whiteboard. I really, really do. All right. I think it's, whoops. That is part of the script actually for the video that's coming out tomorrow. You guys had a chance to see that one today, the AP one. Where's my whiteboard? Here it is. The map from the other day. Now that I've discovered I can just scroll past everything. I don't think there's a limit. I hope not. All right. And I'm going to use the other mouse. That mouse is being a little bit troublesome. All right. Let's pull out the magic mouse. There we go. Magic mouse is better. Okay. So let's say it's your first year at your with your TFSA and you've got 6,500. We'll say that's what it is. That's your contribution room. So you were given 6,500 and you have a half decent little job. You're putting your money away. So I'm going to put CR, so contribution room. So that year you're like saying, okay, well, I want to buy a car. So I'm going to save. And you do. So let's say we're just going to keep this all within 1 year. We're just going to say 1 year. Keep the math nice and simple. So let's say, for example, you do manage to put in $6,000. So you've deposited $6,000 throughout the year and you've had a good year. So we'll say, for example, you got a 10% return on that. So that means that you have your initial 6,000 that you deposited and you made 10% back. So we'll say 600. And once again, we're using 10% just to be easy. So you have Whoops. Let's come down here. So in total, you've got 6,600. And you still have, because you only use 6,000, you still have $500 contribution room. So fantastic. That's wonderful. So what you essentially have is you have $600 of extra space. So let's say at the end of that year, you pulled out the whole 6,600 because you went and you got yourself a nice little used car that you liked. Of course, that 6,600 nowadays, that's probably not a great car. But because you pulled that out, you're still getting that space back. So next year, let's just say, for example, next year, so year 2, you get, we'll say another 6,500 just to make it up. So that is your contribution room. So your total, because at this point, you've only been 2 years, we'll say 2 years over the beginning, is now 1,300. All right, whoops. There we go. So the total contribution room after the second year is like 1,300, but you grew it by 600. So you actually have, whoops, I need a better whiteboard. So you actually have 13,600 in there. So how does this become significant? So in your 20s, if you're at that point where you're really starting to grow things and you're starting to look at pumping up your stocks, even if you pull that money out, you are still growing contribution room. So that when you start to get a little more focused on your portfolio and you're not buying a car and you're not buying a house and things like that, at that point, you have more room to put more stuff into your TFSA so that when we do get closer to retirement and when we start to think, let's say, for example, we want to have an income portfolio when we retire, that's more space. That's more dividends that we're going to be able to pull out of that if you keep, especially if you keep doing that through your 20s and your 30s. So here's the interesting thing. In their 20s as well with investment, holy banana bread. So I'm just going to put up here, let's just put the 20s because that's where we are. So in your 20s, one of the things that you definitely want to look at is you want to look at them growth stocks. And I'll even say you can even look at the higher risk. As long as, I don't want to say you don't want to be playing with penny stocks, but you can certainly be pumping more into growth stocks because that growth stocks, you're going to get the bigger things. Because if you have a growth stock that's exploding, like look at, I hate to keep using NVIDIA, but if you look at NVIDIA, if somebody in their 20s had put NVIDIA into their TFSA and have been riding that over the last couple of years, well, holy cow, that's a lot of extra room that you have picked up. So in your 20s, yeah, you can look at some of these growth stocks, and even if, so let's take that worst case scenario. No, that's already red. Oh, we'll use purple. Worst case scenario, let's say a bear market falls on us. Well, there we go, bear market. So a bear market falls on us. The thing is, with that, I'm going to go to the doodle one now. So with these, you can basically you can wait it out. WAIT. Because you got time. You got lots of time. You can just let those sit in there. Bear markets tend to be maybe 1 year. Maybe if it's a really bad one, it might go a couple of years. But you have the time to wait out that bear market. And that's fantastic because that with there, you're not going to lose anything. It's kind of one of the things, like when we get to the other end of the spectrum, you're not really going to be waiting out bear markets if you're already on the verge of retirement. You don't have the time, and this could really impact what, your income and things like that. That's one of the reasons that you start to shift, and you're going to see this as we sort of move through the ages. So one of the big things that you do want to do is, if possible, in your 20s. So whatever your limit is, so this, this whole 20, the 65 or, 72 or whatever it is at each year, if you can max it out, that would be perfect. And even if it's a situation where you max it out, you let it grow, and then you do have to pull some of it out, that's fine. That's fine. It does happen. Sometimes life happens, right? Sometimes you have to sort of get things in order. But here's the thing, and this is the other part too. Another thing that you should be doing as well in your 20s, and a lot of people are like, I don't want to do it. But you should have your yeah, let's see here, your Emergency. Oh, right. Okay. Well, okay. We'll just do it that way. We'll leave it that way. Who cares? Your emergency fund. You want to have that. You want to start building that emergency fund because no matter what you're going to do in the future, when it comes to investing, you are going to run into that situation where if you don't have an emergency fund and something happens, it can really derail you. So, this is something to keep in mind as well. The other thing you want to do in your 20s is all right, let's go to a different color. We'll go to green. So financial literacy. So that's one of those things too. You want to be learning. So if you may nowadays you are starting to get a tiny bit of exposure in school, but you want to take it into your own hands in your 20s. Learn what you can. Learn about the stock market. Learn about investing. Learn about compounding. All of that fun stuff. In some cases, maybe this is something that becomes a career path. It doesn't have to, but it could. So that option is always there as well. Just kind of ways to get you to get the ball rolling as you're as you're sort of building up and setting up that foundation. So this is kind of cool. Kind of cool. All right, let me get caught up here on the chat. We'll move into the 30s here in a bit. But first of all, where are we at? Holy banana bread. Oh my gosh. All right. Al says, but did you count in a house, another car, family? 35 is when life gets crazy expensive. Yes, absolutely. Things are going to get more complicated, of course. Your 20s, I find, are not that complicated. If you're lucky, ideally, if you're lucky, you're still living in your parents' basement. That's a great way to get to sort of get your finances off to the right start. It's so easy as you're growing up and as you're coming to age to want to move out and get that independence. But the smart move is to not get your independence. Stay at home as long as you can. Save up some money. Make sure you get off on the right foot. Maybe get a good start on your investing, for example. JJ says, kind of the reason I want to go into content creation, probably will start a non-for-profit. Oh, nice. Trevor made it. Good to see you, Trevor. Sammer says, what do you think about these rules for retirement? 4%, 8%, fixed dollar withdrawals, only withdraw the income, wheel strategy, and so on. I don't like any of them, to be honest. I think what you have to do is you have to sort of look at it logically. So when it comes to that, and let's wait till we get to retirement. We'll address that. I'm actually pulling that out. I don't mean let's wait till we're all retired. Let's wait till we get into the 60s, into retirement. Then we'll circle back to this question. But I do like it. But I also don't think that the 4% rule, 8% rule, I don't think you need a hard and fast rule. I think what you need is a good sense of logic, to be honest. All right. Ian says, I'm thinking by 45 or sooner, I want to be semi-retired. All right. Trevor retired in April this year at 66. There you go, Enid. Trevor is older than you. Enid said that she thought she was the oldest in the chat, but no, Trevor has you beaten. JJ says the first million is the goal. Want to get there as soon as possible. Nothing wrong with that. That's a pretty good goal. Now, and I think actually, was it Charlie Munger? It might have been Charlie Munger who was talking about it, saying that the first 100,000 is the hardest. And then once you have that, it's easier to get from 100,000 to 200,000 than it was to get from 0 to 100,000. So that's kind of an interesting concept. But part of it is when you have money, it's easier to make more money. And plus, you start seeing the snowballing effect at that point. Ian says, when do you get out of higher risk? 5 years before retirement? 3 years? Let's. I don't want to answer that yet. We're going to transition that as we go because we're only in the 20s. We're going to sort of transition the way the risk works as we move. So that will get answered. Al says, Sammer, every article I've read about 4% always says you need 1 million to retire. And I would bet the average person has only around 250K. So how realistic is 1 million? Not realistic, because those articles never talk. It's not easy, but it's not hard too. I want to say that it's not easy and it's not hard. How it's not hard is if you start early, and you're consistent through your whole, like if you started in your 20s and you're consistent with your investing strategy, it shouldn't be hard to get to $1 million. You should have no issues. But most people, like I said, a lot of people don't even look at investing in their 20s, unfortunately. We don't have a lot of keeners. If everybody was like JJ, holy banana bread, well, that would be fantastic. But unfortunately, I get a lot of people coming to this channel who are like, I'm in my 50s. I've just started investing. What do I do? Or I'm in my 40s. I don't know if I can make it. I don't think I have enough time. Obviously, the more time you have, the better, the easier it will be. But, here's the thing. If you come at it, and let's say you're day one investing, you're 60. Well, you're not going to have, you're probably not going to be able to build something that you can live off in retirement. But your goal at that point is to make retirement as easy as possible, to generate as much extra income for yourself as you can, which might make the difference, compared to not having the extra income and just living off of government supports. So there are, obviously, the older you are when you start investing, the more difficult it's going to be. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I will not say that there's a magic ticket that you can come in at 60 and hit your $1 million in 5 years. You're probably not going to. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying it's unlikely. Al says about getting CPP or SS in their calculations of 4%. That's interesting. I don't know how, and keep in mind too, it depends on where the content creator is coming from too. So a lot of these are US ones where I think I hear the 4% more from US content creators than anything else. Oh, one of the cats just came in by my legs. And he's got very damp fur. So a little bit of rain out there. Sammer, I agree. I don't like the 4% rule at all. Al says, I calculated it like 2 weeks ago. I think all I need is 300K in my savings, maybe 400K, but for sure, 500K is more than I need. Absolutely. Now, here's the thing. If you are, if you can get to a point with your income portfolio that you don't have to touch the principal, if you can live off of what you're pulling out of it, especially let's say if it is an income portfolio and you're living off of all of your dividends, that plus your government supports and you're making ends meet, that's your best case scenario. Because here's the reality: when you get into old age, as you get older as a senior, you actually end up statistically you will end up spending less money. So it's kind of one of those things. So if it's tight when you retire, 10 years into your retirement, it'll probably not feel as tight anymore. It'll probably feel a little bit better. JJ says Candace should really do this on an iPad. Well, I do have an iPad. The only problem is my iPad's a little old. It's an iAir. I bought it, I think, in 2020. So my phone's a little bit newer and the camera's a little bit better. So that's one of the reasons that I, like this here, like the filming right now it's basically wirelessly going from my iPhone to StreamYard, which is on the Mac Studio, and then it's going out that way. Now, I do also, worst case scenario, and this did happen one live stream for whatever reason. It wasn't actually a live stream on my channel. It was on the Banter. I could not get the camera to work, no way, shape, or form. So I had to use the webcam on the MacBook. And it worked fine. It's not as high a quality. So, and I didn't like it because I was at a weird angle. I almost was thinking as I was trying to get it set up here tonight, I was like, uh-oh, I hope it's not going to be a MacBook night. Because that's the worst case. So, if Well, I guess it's worse. It could be worse than that if the storm came in and all of a sudden the power went out. Then there's no way I could do anything in that case. But my understanding is that, well, let's find out. I actually don't know when it's coming in. So um, let's take a quick gander here. Show you guys some weather. That's funny. Yeah, Jill says it's raining right now. Oops. All right, we need to go to the Weather Network. Right now, we're under a severe thunderstorm watch. All right, here's our radar. So this is me right here, the blue dot in the middle. And this is what's coming. All right. Oh, so here's the big thunder isn't coming until, oh yeah, after midnight. We're safe. We're safe. We got a big line that's coming in, enough to wake me up in the middle of the night. But for now, we're pretty darn safe. Well, there's that one little one there that's going to pass. It looks to me like I'm in the south part of Ottawa. So if we zoom in here, I'll just sort of show you guys. So this here is downtown Ottawa. All right, we'll zoom in a little bit here. All right, so I'm down in this area down in here. Let's see. So there's Hunt Club. All right, I'm somewhere in this vicinity. I always have to find it once I get in a little bit close, but yeah, no, there's uplands. I'm in this little area in here. So this is where I am. So when we look at it this way, you can sort of see a little bit of rain passing, a little bit of rain, rain, deep rain. Oh, there we go. Just before 1 a.m. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. All right. Anyway, this is a finance live stream, not a meteorological one, but hey, why not? All right, let's remove that for a moment. Sammer says my CPP will be ridiculously low. Yeah, and sometimes that can happen. Sometimes, life happens. Maybe you had many years where you just weren't making a lot of money. So that can happen. And sometimes when you're thinking about retirement, that can sometimes come into play. Like if you're thinking of retiring early, you might think, oh gosh, I got a lot of low years on my CPP. Now they will let you drop some of those years, but you may take that into consideration because it might be a situation where you're thinking, maybe I really should work a little bit longer because I am making a half decent amount right now, and it's really helping to pad up my CPP. So that can be, once again, it's all the math. It's always all about the math. Al says 300K in dividend stocks is about 18K per year, which is not too shabby. SSCPP is about 21 per year. I can easily live on 39K per year. Exactly. And keep in mind, not so much with the stocks, but at least with your benefits. So your CPP and your old age security or social security in Al's case, they also go up every year. They usually get an adjustment for inflation. So that's not too shabby as well. So yeah, okay. So your social security will be a lot. That's cool. That's good. Well, not a lot, but more than my CPP. There we go. Sammer says, I can also live on 40K. So I need almost all to come from distributions. Okay. Fair enough. Mario says, I wanted to stay home with mommy. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of funny. I mean, I think in my history with my mom, it's pretty much, I go out on my own, live on my own for a while. And after a while, if it came to a point where I got laid off or something and I was just like, money's going to be tight, I just call up mom and say, hey, can I move home? Then I would move home and then I get sick of my mom usually within about a year, and then I'd be out again. So not, I love my mom, but when you live with as an adult, when you live with your adult parent, well, all your parents are going to be adults, but when you live with your parent, it can start to wear on you because you sort of have that whole parent-child relationship, and that tries to sort of reassert itself even though you're now an adult. So it's fun. Ian says, I plan on only pulling out dividends. Perfect. If you can do that, That's the ideal, right? If you can just live off of your dividends and not have to touch any of your capital as well, that is the ideal. JJ says, I know that once the 30s hit in about 7 years, more expenses will build up. So currently I've been going ham and investing about 60% of my net income. All right. Once you get 1 million, you won't want to stop. Exactly. Exactly. It's addictive. Money's addictive. Trevor says, I finally won. Haha. Sorry, Enid. That's hilarious. That is hilarious. That's me. I just started buying stocks in March, but I did invest in MF and real estate. Okay. Fair enough. So mutual funds, that's what MF is for anybody who's like, what's MF? Tanya says, I spend a lot less than. I find I spend a lot less as I age. So I know I don't need as much as statistical averages report. Exactly. That is exactly true. As you get older, you just don't need as much. For one, you do start to slow down. It's like staying in and watching. I'm gonna go really old on this one, but staying in and watching the good old Wheel of Fortune is a great night. Opposed to when you're younger, it's like, oh, I'm going to go to the movies, or I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to go do that. As you get older, sometimes it's just like, I would just rather stay at home and do some fiddling and faddling, or maybe catch a mountain finance live stream, things like important things like that. Al says, Tanya, same. I think I only spend like 25 to 30K to actually live. Now, Sammer says, if you are mortgage free, that's one thing. If you rent or are still paying mortgage, that is another thing. Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. If you are mortgage free, so you've paid off your house, all you're really worried about are the property taxes. That is ideal as well. So, that used to be the norm. But nowadays, it's not always the norm anymore. Now with the prices of houses and some of these amortizations and the interest, it's hard. It can be hard to do that. Tanya says, and I know some expenses will increase as my work pays for a few things. Okay, fair enough. Al says, let's see. Oh yeah, you need 100% need to be mortgage free. You shouldn't be paying any debts in your retirement, or you are messed up really badly. And yeah, it's hard if you've got a lot of debt carrying that into retirement. Sammer says, I know. So I'll have to retire abroad. Okay. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about your 30s. So now we've been to the 20s, and let me bring up the thing. We'll move back to the whiteboard. And that's not the whiteboard. Here's the whiteboard. All right. So we're going to move. I'm just going to be haphazard. I'm just going to be haphazard here. We're going to move to the 30s. I swear we're going to, okay, 30. Yeah, there we go. We're going to move up to the 30s. We've all just aged 10 years. So, we're not too bad, not too bad. So as you start moving into your 30s, this is where you really want to start thinking about a lot of different things. For one, when it comes to investing, if you haven't been hitting your contribution limits with your funds, so with your TFSA, for example, this is when you want to start thinking about that. So you want to start thinking about boosting contributions if you can, because you should be making more money too, right? One of those traps that people fall into is if you all of a sudden get a better job. A lot of people are like, oh, I got a better job. That means I can have a better car. Even though there's nothing wrong with the current car they have. They're thinking, okay, better job, better car. This is fantastic. So what you're doing is, in that case, let's go to hand draw. So this case here, if let's say you're disposable, DIS, if you're disposable, let's say you had about, we'll say you had $700 a month. That was disposable that you could, ooh, I love it when it does those. Let's say you had $700 a month disposable income, and that went to everything from investing to your entertainment, to different. We won't say clothes or toiletries, but just basically that's you're living on money after you paid everything off. All of a sudden you get this job, and let's say, for example, you're now making an extra $800. We'll say, so your disposable is now going to be up around $1,500. Okay, fantastic. So you're thinking, okay, I got all this extra money, so we'll get a new car. So new car, and that means higher car payments. So all of a sudden, after all of that, your disposable, let's say your disposable, we'll take it down to 500. So let's say you've all of a sudden are in worse shape with what you got left over because you're now making more money, and you're now taking on other things, and that happens. So people start to make more money, and they start thinking, "Oh, well, I want nicer things." So it's really hard sometimes to sort of say, like, right now, I'll give you an example. My iPhone, it's an iPhone 11. It's old. It's old, but it still serves its purpose. But there's so many people, like there's a lot of people who will go out and say, "Oh, there's a new iPhone coming out this fall. I need to get it." And they will, and then those are kind of the ultra fans. But the general public, what the average person does is, for one, they usually don't pay for it in full. They usually just get it through their phone carrier, so Rogers or Telus or Bell, and every time they pay off the phone every 3 years, and nowadays they don't even let you pay off the phone. You still have to pay a little charge, or otherwise they want that phone back. So there's an extra charge that you pay now because of the way they've got the financing set up on the phones. But what the average person does is every 3 years they get a new phone, and sometimes it's less because people like Rogers, for example, they'll get aggressive when they start to see, like, "Oh my God, look, your phone, your contract is up in, like, 3 months or 4 months, or in 5 months. Wouldn't you like to get that phone now?" So sometimes they'll try to get you in even sooner. You gotta be careful. I always say this: if it's working, if your phone is still working, if it's meeting your needs, even though the new shiny bells and whistles look fantastic, hold off. Hold off. So if you can get, so let's say with a new iPhone, if you get a new iPhone and you can get 5 years, 6 years, 7 years out of it, before you need to upgrade, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money that you can save. Now, I think, and I can see a couple of comments already popping up. A few of you have had your phone for a while. This is good to hear. This is definitely good to hear. So it's definitely one of these things you want to do. Now, in addition to, of course, looking at boosting your contributions, another thing you want to start to concentrate on a little bit here is, let's get back to the text. You really want to start paying attention to your diversity. Okay, and that doesn't mean, make sure you're hiring neighbors from different races and things like that, or neighbors hiring neighbors. I was gonna say gardeners. We're talking about diversification of your funds. So you want to start looking at, transitioning from a by the seat of your pants, high risk, trying to grow things as much as you possibly can. You want to start looking at it and say, okay, let's start diversifying a little bit. Let's start seeing if we can hit multiple sectors. Let's start seeing if we can make it a little bit more safe, because when I was talking about higher risk in your 20s, it's simply because in the 20s, if you see something like, for example, somebody in their 20s, I can see them going all in on the video when they're watching this thing explode. So that can be dangerous. But once you've got to your 30s, you got to stop. You got to start to think a little bit differently. You got to slowly start to say, okay, let's start diversifying that portfolio. Let's look at different asset classes, different sectors. You could bring in, physical assets if you want to hold gold or silver at home. You can look at diversifying into crypto. So there's a whole bunch of things that you can start looking at. The other thing that you have to start thinking about in your 30s, because this is what generally happens in your 30s, is a lot of times you start to think about a family. You start to think about creating your own family. So as you're going in, and we'll put this in here, so family, let's put just family planning. So you have to start to take that into consideration in your 30s. So what do you need? Are you going to start to look at life insurance? So if you have a family, do you want some insurance in case something were to happen to you to sort of help your partner? So all of these type of questions are going to start coming up. Everything from different insurances. If you let's say you do have a house at that point, or you're at least paying a mortgage, Maybe it's time to start thinking about fire insurance. Maybe it's time to sort of put more safety nets in place in case bad things happen, because they do happen. Um, a lot of people can say, uh, like let's talk about fires. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, I don't smoke. I'm not gonna, I don't have a fireplace. I'm probably not gonna start a fire. I'm not gonna get fire insurance. I don't need it." Well, here's the reality is, I'll just use my family. In my family alone, we've had 2 houses burned down. So two houses. One was actually my mom's. My mom's house once burnt. It didn't burn to the ground, but the smoke damage caused by basically there was a spike in the end on the energy that blew through a transformer, blew in through the house, and it caught the treadmill on fire, and it just sent this black smoke that filled the house in an instant. It ruined everything in the house. The house was a write-off because of it. But now my aunt's house, when it burnt down, holy banana bread. It was like the next day, it was burnt down. Like the windows had melted. That's how bad it was. So luckily though, in both of these cases, nobody was hurt. Well, in my mom's case, her cat did die. But other than that, it's kind of that thing. It can happen to you. So you always want to sort of keep these things. When you're younger, it's really easy to say it'll never happen to me, because you kind of get that immortality complex. But it can happen, and it does happen. And if it does happen to you, you want to be the one who has insurance. You want to be the one who, and in the 2 cases in my family, my mom had insurance. They rebuilt the house. They rebuilt the house, gave her money for everything in it. She actually ended up being better off after the fire than she was before it. In my aunt's case, she didn't have insurance. So they lost everything. Like, so the schools did drives just to get clothes for her kids type thing. That's how bad it was. So, it's kind of that whole dichotomy going back and forth. So you kind of want to be a little bit careful. Now, also in your 30s, this is when you got to really start thinking about debt. All right. So, what type of debt have you picked up? Are you working on student loans? Did you fall into that trap as at a university? A lot of times they used to have, and I remember it, you used to have this little pamphlet saying you're pre-approved. Everyone's pre-approved for all these credit cards because you're in university, you're going to be fine. Some people would go and apply for a ton of them, and they almost would get all of them, almost pretty much. So it's really easy to get all snagged up in debt in your 20s, and in your 30s, that's when you want to start thinking about it. So you want to sort of focus on taking a good inventory of your debt, figuring out, okay, which ones are the high interest debt? Let's start working on paying off some of that first. So that's something in your 30s. You want to get your debt under control because you don't want to be struggling with your debt. You don't want to move into your 40s, for example, without even a plan on what to do with your debt. I mean, you can still, get your debt under control in your 40s, but it's ideal that if you start early, so in your 30s, you're kind of getting that all the gears in row, everything that you should be working on. That's going to help you big time. It's going to help you absolutely big time. All right, so that's the key to your 30s. So, like I said, with your investing, you're still heavily looking at growth stocks, and total return stocks are great as well. But you're starting to look at a more diversified field. So that's kind of the big change in your portfolio, is you've got more diversification. You're starting to transition a little bit into total return out of pure growth, but you still have a good amount of pure growth. And you still have time in your 30s. If a big bear market were to hit, you're still going to be fine. There's no issue there at all. Whew, all right, back to the chat. Ian says, my house is paid off, but the bills are $800 a month. Won't be living in this house in retirement. Oh, wow, that's a good amount. That's a good amount of bills. Al says, you can downsize and use the extra quality or the extra equity to buy stocks. That is true. That is true. Jonathan says, when I get a better job, I'm thinking now I can get more stock. Exactly. That's the thing. Getting a better job is an opportunity to start pumping up the, get that second raise, get the raise from your income coming in from dividends, right? Mario says, I have a old phone, works fine. Exactly. That's the whole thing. If it works, fine. Ian says, Al Bundy, I was thinking the same thing. What is the current number of an iPhone? I believe right now, I think it's 15. I think it's 15 with 16 coming out, or it's 16 with 17 coming out. Oh dear gosh. You know what? That's why we have Chat GPT. Let's find out. All right, what is the current iPhone edition? There we go. All right, we'll know here in a second, unless somebody already knows in chat. Oh, yeah, it is 15. So we're on 15. We're going into 16. There we go. Wonderful. Thank you, Chat GPT. Giving you a little bit of a shout out there, AI girl. Let's see here. My phone is 7 years old, and that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And if it's still working, that's the whole thing. Right now, out of all of my things, the one thing that my phone, my watch actually started, the battery started dying early. It wasn't making it through a day. But then it's amazingly, I did the next update on it, and that seems to have resolved it. It seems the battery seems to be fine again, which is good because I didn't want to get a new watch. All right. Sammer says mine is 4. Let's see here. Phones and cars are like hardcore money losers. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, but I got the battery replaced. Okay, fantastic. Yeah. I have almost zero diversification in my stocks. Oh dear. Oh dear. Well, and that's the thing. You can be successful with no diversification, but you are taking a risk. And you got to look at your risk profile. And if you're like, okay, well, I feel fine. So for example, like every so often I take some, I don't want to say they're risky risks, but I will take some risks from time to time that I know is breaking my own rules of diversification. But it's because I know of a sure thing. So when I say a sure thing, a sure thing, as sure as something can be in investing. Um, for example, I knew kind of some of the stuff that was going to happen with Nvidia, so I did move a few funds over in that direction just to take advantage of it. So I've got a couple of retirement accounts that are a little bit out of balance, but as soon as pretty much as soon as things start to settle on Nvidia, I'll shift things back again. All right, let's see here. That drives 1,000,000 miles. All right. So I own 2 stocks in my portfolio. Hopefully one is a all equity maybe, because that would give you a lot of diversification. Sammer says, my safety stocks on retirement will be covered calls over 10% yield. Well, there we go. There we go. Oh, I know. I know. It was a nice cat. Cat by the name of Boots. I don't know how to do covered calls. I am too new. Well, in the case of what they're talking about, though, is the covered call ETF. So you're not doing the covered calls. The management team on the ETFs, they're the ones doing the covered calls. You're just enjoying the profits. So if you want it, now you could do your own covered calls if you get into options trading, but it's not for everyone. We do have some folks in the community that are very much into options. And I actually plan to do a couple videos on options down the road. I want to play with them a bit. So we'll leave that there for the moment, though. Ian had said, same here, house paid off and monthly housing is $90 per month. Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, sorry. I was going to say that's fantastic, but no, it's not 90. It's 900. Holy banana bread. If only it were 90, Enid. If only it were 90. Let's see. The iPhone 15 Pro is coming out in August, I think. No, well, it'll be the 16, right? The 16 should be coming out in September. But that should be the one that has the new Apple Intelligence on it. So that'll be really interesting. All right. Enid says, we plan to retire abroad too and sell the house before we leave. Now, the nice thing is if it's your primary house of residence, you're not going to pay any taxes on selling it. That's a good thing. Mario says, I need some renovation now since the house is paid off. Let's see. Mario says, my last phone lasted 5 years. Only pick up a new phone since I couldn't do updates for Wealth Simple. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Once your phone is no longer meeting your criteria. Now, also, just to sort of go back, you don't have to buy the newest when you do. Like, let's say, for example, your 5-year-old phone has stopped working. Well, you don't have to go and buy the brand new iPhone or the brand new Samsung. You could probably buy. I usually buy one model. Like if right now we're currently on 15, I probably would look at the 14s. I'll get it a little bit cheaper, and I'm probably still going to get another 5-6 years out of it. So just something to keep in mind. Mario says, my last phone lasted 5 years. Only pick up a new phone since I couldn't do update. Oh, I just read that. Jackie says, I have Google Pixel 4, 7 years old, works perfectly. Great. Awesome. Google Pixel's an interesting one. Let's see. Are you going where, Enid? Let's see. That's good to know. I just bought a Pixel 8 in January. Now I know I don't need to upgrade for at least 4 versions. Oh, there we go. Sammer says, I'm thinking in moving to Panama. Let's see. I'm too scared to do options. I watched videos how to. Yeah, and you know what? Options is not for everyone. It's not for everyone at all. You can still do half decent investing without getting into options. But it's another thing that's out there. JJ says, I have the Samsung S21 Ultra. Been with it for 3 years now and don't plan on switching anytime soon yet. Yeah. And that's understandable. See, in my case, I'm tied into Apple because the problem is the Apple ecosystem works so well. So it works really, really, really well. So for example, it's easy for me to transfer stuff from my MacBook Pro over to the Mac Studio. I can even drag, like I can take my mouse and it will leave the Mac Studio and go onto my laptop, the pointer. So I can actually move things over and I can copy and paste across the machines as well. So there's so many things that are just so convenient. Now, and one of the other reasons too is now that I'm in the Mac area is that I use Final Cut Pro for editing. And I've seen people on non-Mac systems doing editing, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to take that long to do editing. I like the fact that it's so seamless on a Mac. So I'm tied into that for that reason. And now the best thing is with the new operating system that's coming out I think that's also coming out in the fall. Sakota, I think they're calling it. I will be able to actually pull my phone up on my studio and I could have the phone over on the side and I can do everything on my phone, but on the thing. And I think that's going to be really cool. So there's a lot of great things coming out in the fall. We live in a wonderful time. Al says, I just bought tons of NVIDIA. They are doing so good. I don't really need to do options right now. Yeah. NVIDIA, if you had bought a ton of NVIDIA a year ago, whoa, you'd be in really good shape. Really, really good shape. Enid says, took Mexico off the list, planning to visit Asia in September to figure it out. And JJ saying, ride the NVIDIA wave. Yeah, absolutely. Al says there's something in the Discord saying he is moving his family to Costa Rica. I've seen a lot of the Costa Rica talk in the Discord. And Al says, it's so good. I'm very happy. Let's see, which Mac Air Pro do you use? The M2. So right now, like my oldest right now is my MacBook Pro. It is not even an M. It's got the Intel chip. So I got that Mac Pro I think I got it in 2020. And the funny thing is, after I bought it, they quite literally announced the first M1 almost a week after I bought it. And I was like, don't. I should have just waited. Yeah, so that's the only one. Now, my Mac Studio has the M1 chip on it. I got a Mac Studio Ultra. It's the first of them. But, and it works fantastic. I mean, and even the MacBook Pro, it still works really, really good. So I'm definitely enjoying all of it. All right. JJ says, in terms of pure power and optimization, Windows laptops still have a long way to go to match Apple. Yeah, exactly. Like With my MacBook Pro, before I picked up the Mac Studio, I was basically I had 2 monitors plugged into the laptop, and I was running it like a desktop, and I was doing editing on it. I was doing everything, and it was fine. It was fine. Now the Mac Studio, little tiny bit faster, but the MacBook Pro was not bad at all. Al Bundy says, I bought my NVIDIA on March 7th, and I am up 34.5% so far. Nice. That's pretty good. JJ says, Keith's family is moving here before the end of the wave. Sorry, the end of the year. Oh, the wave. Okay. Oh, you still have the Intel variant. Ew. Yeah, I know. But the next one I get will have an M chip. But right now, like I said, it's working fine. There's like not even a remote call to like right now, between the studio and the MacBook, there's no call at all for computers. Upgrade wise, my watch. My iPad probably only for the reason that because it's so old, I can't use it as a webcam, sort of like I can because the OS on it is a bit too old before they started allowing that to use that. So, all right. Oh wow, we're slowly getting there. Let's move into the 40s. All right, pull this up here, and we're now into the 40s. Heading into that midlife crisis time. All right. So basically in your 40s, there's a lot of different things you want to start looking at. So first of all, you really want to start looking at your portfolio. So you want to start reviewing it a lot more regularly. You want to start trying to set it up as when it comes to diversity, when it comes to what your longer term goals are. These are things that you want to take a look at. And you also want to really start saying, okay, what is my risk tolerance? What am I permitting myself to do? Because at this point, you still have time. Like if you stay in your growth stocks, you still have time to make a recovery if we were to fall into a pretty bad bear market. But you don't have as much time as you used to. So your time's kind of in half. So you may have 10 to 20 years, maybe 25 if you're only at 40. So you may have 25 years, but more realistically, probably 20 to sort of get things out. But at this point, this is where I would transition fully, almost fully, not 100%, but mostly into your total return stocks. So these are going to be your stocks that have perhaps, they won't have the biggest dividends, but well, they could. In some cases, you could have a really high dividend on a total return stock, provided as long as you're getting some growth too. So you're looking for those stocks that have growth and dividends. So you want the best of both worlds. You want that hybrid stock that's going to do everything. It's your switch hitter. It's your, it's that stock that's going to help build up that portfolio for you. Now, when you're in your 40s, this is also when you tend to be making the most money. So this is that time where if you've been lax, in your 20s or your 30s, and you're falling behind when it comes to your contribution space, this is a great time to start funneling a bit more money into your contributions so that you can try to get your TFSA caught up. Because ideally, when you retire, if you can, ideally, if you can have your TFSA maxed, that would be fantastic. That would be absolutely fantastic. So we got rebalancing as one of your focuses on just getting getting everything to where you want. We're looking at total returns as kind of a whoops. Here we go. All right, total returns. There we go. Total returns is a bit of a focus on your account because you really want to have, like I said, you want to start seeing some of that income. You also want to see the growth continuing because we're still trying to expand that TFSA as much as we possibly can. So that's kind of a cool thing. Now, if at 40, you start to have kids, that's when you might want to start thinking, okay, well now, if I haven't already started like an RESP, is that something I'm going to do for my kids? And I would say yes. So with the RESP, all right, we're just going to go to the pencil. So with the RESP, all right, so it makes sense to set that up and let things start growing. Now, if you're low income, then it super makes sense to set up the RESP for your kids. Because if you're low income, like your family is making less than, I don't know the exact number, we'll say if you're making less than 50,000 a year for your family income, there's a 2,000. So the Canadian Learning Savings Bond, that's $2,000. So free money, just simply $2,000. So even if you have no money to put into your RRSP or into an RESP, whoops, sorry. Well, that's a weird dollar sign. Set it up anyway. Apply for the bond, and then your kids, if they do decide to go to university, they've got or trade school, they've got $2,000. That's better than nothing. That gives them at least a little bit of something. And that's, well, I mean, if they're at a situation where they have to do student loans, that's $2,000 less of student loans. So that sort of helps them out a little bit. So just something to keep in mind with that RESP is you can get that. And if you do, of course, make regular contributions, you're going to get money as well, some grant money from the government. And here's the worst case. So let's say you're low income and you no money to put into the RESP, but you set it up, you apply for these grants for your kids. Let's say you got 2 kids. So each of them has $2,000 sitting in an RESP. Maybe the first kid says, nah, nope, they decide not to. So that 2,000, all that happens is it just goes back to the government. So, you don't lose anything. The 2,000 goes back. Now, here's the funny thing. This is the beautiful thing. If you put that 2,000 in, and let's say you made, let's say you made $200 on it. So you made 10%. So if you made an extra $200, so you have to give the 2,000 back, but of that 200, you would pay taxes on it, and then you'd have a 20% penalty, but you're still going to have money left over. So you actually still end up with free money, even if the kid says, nah, I'm not doing it. So it's kind of that neat little way that math works. So something just to keep in mind. And then the other thing too is just to start thinking as well about, as you're thinking about retirement, you want to start thinking about your insurance even more. Like, is life insurance something that you want to take out for yourself? It can definitely make sense. Most people are probably, maybe you both live to be old, ripe and old, and it doesn't really help you. But in those situations where something does happen and, you die early, it's good especially if you're the breadwinner, it's really good that you can have some insurance in place for your spouse. It's definitely not a bad thing. So just something to keep in mind as you're moving as you're in your 40s. So, all right, now let's quickly get caught up in chat, and then we're going to jump to the 50s because we're taking much longer than I had anticipated, but that's fine. JJ says the M4 chips are coming out pretty soon. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, for the Macs. So that's going to be kind of cool. All right, let's jump ahead to those 50s. All right. Boom. All right, we're going to change color again. Let's go with orange. All right, we're up to the 50s. Whenever I say that, I'm thinking 1950s, but no, not the 1950s. So as we start to get into your 50s, so the 40s tend to be the year that you're making a lot of money, but for some people, the 50s, you might even be making more. It's kind of that thing as you're sort of thinking about it. Now, as you're into your 50s, this is your time to... This is the time that you really want to max that the TFSA if you can. That's kind of one of them goals. Get it maxed, and then you only have to worry about the contribution limit each year going forward. So that's a good thing. The other thing you want to do is you really want to start readjusting your risk, because you got to start looking at the fact that I'm going to put risk lowering, for the simple reason that you're now getting to that point where big mistakes in your portfolio can directly impact retirement, especially older into your 50s. So maybe at 50, you still, you're not going to be so hurt so bad. But when you're like, in the late 50s, then some of these impacts can be like devastating. They can be absolutely devastating on your retirement. So you want to start managing your risk a little bit better in your 50s. So you want to start thinking about, okay, you know, maybe I want to start going a little more blue chip, or maybe I want to start pulling a bit back into some of the safer stocks and start thinking about uh, not just your diversity, but what are these stocks that you're going to hold forever, and what are you going to start thinking about? What are you going to start thinking as your portfolio? So this is where you really start to put into actual retirement planning. So at this stage, you should be thinking, okay, I've got these total return stocks. What is my goal in retirement? What is retirement going to look? So you've now got data. So you should have at this point, because you can go to the Service Canada website, and that should give you an estimate of what your CPP is looking like. So that gives you some data points that you can start sort of saying, okay, this is what I couldn't be expecting in CPP. This is what I'm expecting in OAS. Do I qualify for the GIS? So you have all of these things that you can sort of put together, which is fantastic. It's absolutely great. But that's the thing. You want to make sure that the numbers are going to work, and that you have to figure out, okay, well, if I'm going, so let's say, for example, if you plan to go income. So if you want an income portfolio, okay, what do you need? How much do you need? Well, what I would do right now is say, okay, so if I went full income right now, if I went full income, whoops, how the heck did that happen? Okay, so if I went, let's say I went full income now, how much would it be? All right, that's a good question. So then you can ask yourself, is that enough? But you got to keep in mind, when you're looking at that full income for right now, it's not how much you need right now to survive, because you got all your other incomes coming in. It's how much would you need if you had none of the other incomes coming in. And when you're looking at this, take a look, there's other questions that you can ask. So for example, will my mortgage be paid off? So will your mortgage be paid off when you get to a retirement? That's going to change things. So you kind of want to look at a whole bunch of different things like this. You want to be looking at all of the math, getting kind of a rough calculation of what you're going to make. So from that, you can then look at your portfolio, and you can analyze your portfolio and sort of say, okay, well, yeah, if I did switch it to full income, let's say, for example, you switched to full income and you were able to get let's say you were only able to get 18K a year in dividends. And you're like, okay, I can get 18K a year in dividends if I switch this fully over. And then you'd have to look at your other supports, right? So, your CPP, your OAS, and then you have to sort of say, is that enough money? Is that enough money to survive on? If the answer is yes, then fantastic. That's great. At that point, if you want, you can you can actually start transitioning more into some of those income stocks as you see the opportunities there. You can certainly do that. But if the answer is no, then you may want to hold on to that growth side a little bit longer, because then the more you grow that account, when you do switch it over fully to income, you'll have more income because you'll be able to fit in more of the higher income stocks. So that's kind of that interesting thing in your 50s. Now, in addition to all of that, this is where you also want to start thinking about what are you going to do medical wise when you get to when you retire. Now, luckily, at least in Canada, most medical things are covered, and the only real big thing, I guess, for seniors is prescriptions. But that the government looks to be making a move in that direction, but it doesn't really cover everything. So you want to start keeping that in mind. And if you need to have a fund put aside for medical expenses when you are older. So just something to sort of put as a kind of a side note. It's usually not that important in Canada as it is elsewhere. All right, let's get caught up before we retire into the 60s here. We got a meower in the house with a hi. Mario says, "Don't get office REIT like me." There we go. Tanya says, "20s was travel. 30s was buy all you can. 40s was, oh, a shot I should be saving. 50s are when I can retire." There we go. Mario says, "I max out my TFSA yearly. Bit need to work on past years to my renovation to do." Okay, fair enough. Tanya says, "Hopefully the office REIT start looking at the other days to use properties." Now, some office REITs. Now, if you guys did watch the AP, so the Allied Properties, I mean, they are office REITs. That's pretty much what they do. I will admit, I went into that thinking, "Oh my God, this is going to be a train wreck." But when I did the deep dive, I was like, "Okay, this is actually not so bad. This company has been kind of preparing, and they've been handling it the right way." So I do like that. So it doesn't mean I still think that residential REITs will recover faster on average, but I don't know. That AP has me very interested, has me very intrigued. Al says, "Do medical stuff, doctor visits, surgery, etc., have co-pays that the patient has to pay?" Not so much. So here, pretty much most of it is free. The only problem is wait times. That's the problem in Canada, is that you have much longer wait times for things like in the US, because where you're paying, you can get your treatment really fast. In Canada, not so much so, unless it's urgent. So if you have something in Canada that is very, very severe, whether it be a heart condition or something that is life threatening, they do not waste any time. You get to see people fast. But if you got a pain in the knee or you just need some knee surgery, you may have to learn you may need to have to learn how to do pain management for a while, because it could be a while before you actually get in and get that taken care of. Bismarcky says, "I'm in my early 50s, mortgage free, putting as much money into VFV as possible. Do I need more diversity?" So VFV, the Vanguard, they're fantastic. It's a really good ETF. Um, I think if that's your core in your account, that's not a bad one. It's really not. Um, if you were throwing it into, I wouldn't even go there. I'll just say that that's a good one. If I had to, there's a handful of ETFs that if I only had one, that I would consider, and that's on that handful list. Another one, of course, is VEXQ. So they're all equity. But yeah, no, that's not a bad one. Not a bad one at all. Okay. Oh, we're here. We're here. We're at the 60s. So as you move into your 60s, you're basically at this point you're saying, "Okay, it's time to get ready for retirement." So the first thing you have right away at 60, your very first question before you think of anything is, do you take the CPP? I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I just heard some thunder rumble in the background. But hopefully it'd be cool if we had like a big black blast of one here. That would be kind of cool. But so far not. So do you take your CPP at 60? So when you take your CPP early, of course, you do get a reduced rate. That's the rub, right? Now, some people are like, "Okay, well, still, if I take the reduced CPP and invest it, I'm probably going to make more." Fine. That could be true, unless we have a bear market. If you take your CPP early, get a reduced rate, and we fall into a bear market, it's going to be a little bit harder to recoup that. So that's one of those things you have to kind of weigh. So at the 60s, you're thinking about that. Do I want to take my CPP? Do I want to hold off? And sometimes that calculation might even be like, let's say taking your CPP eliminates the GIS. But if you hold off on the CPP, you can at least ride the GIS while the CPP gets bigger as you're holding off on it. So that can be an option. So do you take that CPP at 60? That's your first question. Other factors that will come into that is, let's say, for example, your health is not that great. If your health is not that great and you don't think you're going to make it very long, because, I hate that people are sometimes in that position, but, if you're in a situation where you're really not even expected to make it to 70, then you're probably going to be taking that CPP at 60. It would make sense in that case, especially if you're in a situation where a lot of people in your family die young. You may want to take it a little bit early. But now, the other big theme is going to be your transition to income. So at this point, this is where you want to start looking at your total return stocks and say, okay, how I would do it is I'm not going to just sort of like sell everything and just throw it all into income at that point. But what I'll look at is I'll start looking at my total return stocks, and I'll probably start with the ones that have the smallest total returns. And then I would basically say, okay, this one's only giving me, lately, this one's only been giving me 8% return, total return. Let's move out of that position and move that over to this covered call one that's giving me 12%. Dividends, full straight up dividends. So I'll start looking at that and start looking at transitioning things. And a lot of this will also depend. On, is my TFSA maxed? If it's not maxed, I might sort of push this as close to 65 as possible, just so that I can get a bit more growth. So that might be an issue in that case. But if you are maxed and the growth part is not an issue, then you definitely want to I would start right at 60, start slowly doing it. The other thing you have to start thinking about is, I'll put this in here, when 65 comes, that's where you have OAS. I guess, and in the US, that would be your Social Security. Do you want to take it at 65? That one as well. You can defer it and get more. So it really boils down to, so here's how I would look at it. So at 65, if I'm still working, let's say I'm working, I like my job, and I'm not planning to stop the job right away. Well, then obviously, yeah, I will, I'll delay OAS. There's no reason for me to take it at that point. So I might as well get more for when I do stop working. So these are just little things you want to take into consideration as you're sort of moving in. Now, the other thing too is we need to look at, of course, are you going to be looking at withdrawing? So obviously, yes. So the first thing, of course, is going to be the income. So that's going to be like darn it. Whenever I hit enter, I keep thinking I can type on the next line, but I can't. So yeah, you're going to be looking at, first of all, your income for sure. So income, which is going to be your dividends, distributions, same thing. We'll just put distributions. So your dividends, your distributions, these are things that you're going to be looking at 100%. Now, here's that thing. Some people will look and say, okay, well, I've got a ton in there. Why don't I just start pulling some of that money out? So some people want to look at maybe liquidating a little bit. And that's where, if you've heard that 4% rule, that's where people are thinking about that. Oh, not a 4%, 4%. There we go. Can I actually? Oh, I can. Look at that. I didn't realize. I guess. Okay, that's kind of cool. That's where that 4% rule comes in, and that really boils down to me. I'd want to say, look at what you're doing. So here's how I would look at it. So let's say, for example, I decide I'm just going to keep my total returns right now because it's growing my thing. So I don't want the income right away, but I still need to pull money out. So how I would do is I would first of all look at, I would first say, what is my total return? So what is my total return on that account? So let's say, for example, that I am getting, we'll put it over here. Let's say I'm doing really well. Let's say I'm getting 15%. That's dividends and growth. If I'm getting 15%, and let's say, for example, my TFSA here is, whoops. My TFSA is $100,000. So, and I'm pulling out 15% a year on that. So that's not too shabby, right? So that would be, so in that case we're looking at what, 15,000? So $15,000 a year. that is coming out. And we're just using small numbers, basically to make the math easy. So in that case, we're looking at $15,000 a year. So in this situation, I'd be looking at it, and what the 4%er would do is they would say, okay, you can take 4% of that 15,000. So that 4%er, or they might be saying you can take 4% of, actually, they would say 4% of the 100,000 that you could take. So basically that would be 4,000. They would say, yeah, you can take 4,000 a year out of that. That's crazy. You are making 15,000. If you need more, I would say take more. If you need 10%, you could take, in this case, you could take 10,000 out of that a year. And, you're still ahead of the game on your principal. So that's not a bad thing. But it really boils down to the math. My goal, personally, is that my principal always stays fairly high. If they fall, then I'm going to be a little bit concerned. So just something to keep in mind when it comes to that. But as I said, if you're into a full-on transition to an income, you don't even have to worry about this. You could conceivably, if you are still picking up some growth, you could conceivably pull a little bit. But if you pull a little bit out, it is going to then impact that income number. So you have to keep that in mind. So you have to sort of balance it going forward. Now, the other thing is, we're talking about your TFSA. What about that RRSP? So we haven't really touched on that during this video. So with the RRSP, here's the thing. As you're going through the year, so from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, how should you be using that RRSP? Well, a couple of things. Let's just pull this over. So if you've got U.S. dividends, that's a perfect place. Throw them into the RRSP. Great place for them. That way there, you're not paying any withholding tax. You're going to pay tax on it anyway when you do pull it out of your RRSP. And the other thing is tax deferral. So if you have, whoops, come on, here we go. There we go. I'm going to get a better whiteboard. Tax deferral. So if you have a year where you're making a lot of money, you may not want to pay, like, especially if you push up into a higher bracket, you may not want to pay that higher tax rate in the higher bracket. So you could conceivably just put that whole thing in your RRSP and not pay that extra tax on it. So, and the way that works is, I don't know what the brackets are off the top of my head, but I'm just going to go here just to do it. So let's say, for example, the first bracket, the free bracket's like 0 to, what is it? Let's say 7,000. So everything you make in 0 to 7,000 would have a 0% on it. So no tax. Woohoo. Wonderful. Then in this situation, if you have like 7,001 to, let's say, 20,000. I'm just making these up off the top of my head, folks, so don't take any of these numbers seriously. Let's say in that situation, you're paying, I'm going to say, we'll say about a 12% tax. All right, so in this situation here, so let's say, or we'll go a little higher. Let's say 21, I'm just going to put K, 21K to, let's say, 35K. And we'll say that there is going to be, we'll say 21%. All right. So in this case here, let's say you're willing to pay the 12%, but you don't want to pay 21%. So if you had a year where you made $21,000, oh, that one turned into a square. What's going to happen is, for the first 20,000, you're going to pay 12%. That last $1,000 will be at the 21%. So what you could do in that case is take that $1,000 and you could move it into your RRSP. All right, so you're not going to pay that 21%. Then when you retire, if you're pulling that, eventually you pull that $1,000 out, chances are you're in a lower bracket at that point. So that's kind of what's happening. And especially the higher and the more brackets you go up, the more important it is. But keep in mind, so when you do get to retirement, I've mentioned the TFSA. So, right. So you don't want to be pulling things out of your TFSA if possible. But whatever the things that you do have, like in your RRSP, Yeah, that should be your priority. Pull that stuff out. And that goes back to like the RRSP meltdown. Like a lot of people subscribe to getting that thing emptied out as quickly as you can because you don't want to get caught with a bunch of money in your RRSP when your days are done because that gets taxed big time. Now, the only exception is if your spouse is still alive. But if your spouse goes first and then you go soon after and you've got all the money in your RRSP, even if you left it to your kids, it's still going to get taxed at the marginal rate, the whole thing. So the TFSA, not so much. The TFSA is, you can leave that to your kids in a much more friendly way without having to pay all of that marginal tax on it. So your RRSP, you want to utilize that first, because here's the thing: everything coming out of the RRSP, that's all tax, right? So it's all taxable, and this here is no tax. No tax. There we go. So that's kind of a good thing when you're starting to look at that. So as I said, as you're moving into retirement, you're going to build up your income portfolio, or if you're going a different route, then you're going to figure out how you're going to balance withdrawals. Any withdrawals that you do have to make, though, prioritize getting it out of your RRSP first. If you don't, like I said, the government will get it. But if you live to a ripe old age, and it's in your RRSP, once you've hit 71, it'll turn into an RRIF, and then it will start coming out automatically, and you'll have no control over that. So that's something to keep in mind too. So it's not nice sometimes if you don't have control, then you can't play any games when it comes to trying to avoid taxes. So just one of those things to keep in mind. Holy banana bread. All right. All right, let's bring big me back up again here. Oh my God. Look at all this talk. Look at all this talk. I missed so much. All right. Al says, I plan to buy VFB as much as possible when I get a TFSA. Perfect. XEQT. Yeah, XEQT is also a good all equity. So there's XEQT, VEQT. Actually, XEQT, I think, pays the dividends more frequently than VEQT. So that's a selling point there. Mario says, I know Allied Properties rents out a bottom floor to a gym called Planet Fitness. Yeah, absolutely. Mario likes XEQT. Glenna says, Candace, do you know if VFB dividends are eligible? I can't find the answer anywhere. Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's a simple question. So with VFV, most of the stuff that they're investing in is American companies. So if you're investing in American companies, those would not be considered eligible. Because when you look at the thing, it's not when you look at an ETF, the CRA doesn't look at like VFV and say, okay, it's all or none. They'll look at each individual company and how much is coming in. So for example, if let's say you had an ETF that was investing in 50% Canadian banks and 50% American banks, we'll just use that as an example. Well, 50% of those dividends would be considered eligible dividends. The other 50% would be ineligible. So that kind of works that way. So normally, if you can help it, anything that has anything in it that is American, if you can get that into your TFSA, you're in better shape than if you have it outside. Because obviously, if you have it in a personal account and it's ineligible dividends, you are looking at paying a little more tax on them. So, just something to keep in mind. Mario says, I'm 8 years ago from my 60s. Please show down. Okay, please slow down. Maybe is that slow down? I think it was. Okay. Al says they are because they are Canadian. The U.S. dividends will be withheld and you can't recover it, but you don't see it, and it will be incorporated into the dividend you do get. So that also does happen as well. So when you're looking at VFV, there is withholding tax that happens for the company. So for Vanguard as a management company, they will pay the 15% withholding tax on all of the different companies they hold from the U.S., and that happens before all the calculations are made when they tell you how much you're going to get. So if you really want to maximize, some people will say, okay, we'll get VOO, the US version, and throw it in your RRSP. And that way there, you're not losing that 15% withholding tax. But you are then being taxed 100% on it, because when you pull it out of your RRSP, it's 100% taxable. So you kind of have to sort of look at it that way. All right. All right. Let's go here. Yeah, exactly. So VFB is basically VOO, VOO. All right. Let's see. Al Bundy says, I like my ZSP. Let's see. Honestly, I don't know Canadian ETFs. I just know VFV because I just looked it up today. Oh, very convenient. Very convenient. Al says, I have no idea what ZSP is. Let's see. Okay, BMO's SP500. I just looked it up. Candace will let you know, Al Bundy, what ZS. Well, now I will. Now I will. Now I have no choice, right? You called me out. Whoops. There we go. Bitcoin is at zero. I don't know. Apparently. Oops. You guys can't actually see. Let's pull this up. All right. ZSP. ZSP. I think it's a BMO. So here it is. Yeah. So the BMO S&P 500 index. So yeah. So this one's going to be very similar to VFV. When you look at it, you're going to see the same. Whoops. One of these weird things Max will sometimes do. You're going to see the same kind of growth. So definitely a good stock. But yeah, anything that starts with a Z, it's usually BMO because they start all of theirs with Z. All right. Let's see here. All right. Enid says, I got to leave now, but I'll catch up on the video after our walk. Stay well, everyone. Take care of yourselves. Chat more on Discord. All right. And a whole bunch of goodbyes and a goodbye, young one. Bye for now. All right. VEQ is semi-annual. ZEQT XEQT and ZEQT are quarterly. HEQT is monthly for dividend payments. Oh, there we go. Thank you, JJ, for breaking that down. But all right, guys. Holy banana bread. I think this is the longest channel member chat that we've done, an hour and a half. Fantastic. All right. So for those of you who are wanting to catch the hockey game, now's your time. Now's your time. Until though, let me see here. We do have a market close tomorrow, by the way. So we'll be here 15 minutes before the bell, and we'll do that. We'll do that tomorrow. That'll be a lot of fun. You guys this was a great topic. This was definitely a great topic to do. I mean, actually a lot more content than we normally do with one of these themes. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. You guys have been absolutely awesome. All right. So thank you guys once again for being a just a second. I got to answer Al. What is Blossom? So Blossom, it's a social media app for investors. So right now it covers Canada and the US. So there's a link down below. So Al, when you're finished here, go down below, click on the extra info. There should be a link in there to Blossom. So you hook it up on your phone and then you just go, you don't have to hook up your profile if you don't want to, but you can go in, sign up, follow me once you're there, because that way there I can watch what you're seeing. But then you can basically talk to a whole bunch of different people who are basically investors. Most of the Canadian financial YouTubers are there. So Brandon Beavis, myself, Canadian in a t-shirt. They are starting to bring in a whole bunch of US ones as well. So the Bowtie Nation guy, Joseph Hogue, he's on there. So, definitely a bunch of good YouTubers, and it's a really good community. Good chance to get ideas and talk. I know Enid loves it over there. So definitely check that out. And I look forward. I can't wait. Once you follow me, I will follow you back. I look forward to seeing what you guys post. And I also like to comment on them too. So always fun. Paul, you get in just at the end. But hey, you can rewatch it. It's going to be there forever. And Jonathan says, this was an epic live stream. It was very epic. We even used purple to symbolize epic at one point. Vic is in the house. Hi, Vic. Oh, Vic, you got in at the end, but you're good. You're good. Hey, Paul. Yeah, everything is just starting to wrap. No, the party's not just starting. The party's ending. The party is ending. So yeah, this is a long stream. Finally sat through the channel member ones live. There we go. All right. We're finished. We're finally finished. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take off. I will see you guys tomorrow. We're going to have, I think it's going to be a fantastic stream. So until then, take care and bye, everybody.